Assalamu alaikum dear students. Today we are going to discuss incomplete sentences. What is an incomplete sentence? A group of words which appears to convey only part of a complete thought, lacking some component which is grammatically necessary to complete the thought. First of all, we'll discuss sentence fragment. Sentence fragments are a common mistake. A sentence fragment is an incomplete sentence. It could be a prepositional phrase or it could be a dependent clause. An English sentence must have a subject and a verb of its own study. The sentence we are going to discuss today. An English sentence must have a subject and a verb of its own. Study the sentences given below. Zan took out his pen. He started writing. As you can see, both sentences given above have a subject and a verb of their own. They also make complete sense. A sentence can have any number of clauses, but it must have at least one main or independent clause. A dependent or subordinate clause, too, will have a subject and a verb of its own. However, a dependent clause cannot stand on its own. It needs to be attached to an independent clause. It is easy to determine whatever a clause is dependent clause or an independent clause. A dependent clause will almost always begin with a subordinating conjunction. As we have discussed early in our lectures, there are some examples: if, when, whether, before, after, unless, though, although, even if, because, as, since, etc. Now we have to look at the example, why are you crying? There is a question, why are you crying? And then the answer, because mummy hit me. Now we have to look at what is a complete sentence, because we are going to discuss the incomplete sentences and complete sentences. Basically, there is a difference between these two. A complete sentence must have two essential parts, a subject and a verb. As we have discussed earlier in our lecture, a subject is a noun that tells us what the sentence is about. A subject tells us how, who, or what. The verb is the action of the subject, or it may be a linking verb. The part of the sentence that contains the verb is called the predicate. If either of these two essential parts is missing, the sentence is incomplete. Basically, that's the thing which we have to discuss today in our lecture, which complete the sense of sentence or incomplete the sense of sentence. As we have discussed, the sentence fragment, because he was never on time, needs to be attached to an independent clause. Earlier we have discussed an example that why are you crying? Because mummy hit me, as we have discussed. Here we have to look at the dependent clause, because mummy hit me. Now look at this example. Why are you crying? Because mummy hit me. Here the independent clause mummy hit me is perfectly normal in spoken English, but it is considered incorrect in writing. When you write, you have to use complete sentence. You have to write, I am crying because mummy hit me. Now we have to look another example. For example, why did he lose his job? Because he was never on time. The sentence fragment because he was never on time needs to be attached to an independent clause. Now look at this. He lost his job because he was never on time. Sentence fragments are perfectly acceptable in spoken English. In fact, when you speak, if you use complete sentences all the time, you will sound very unnatural. However, you must make a conscious effort to avoid fragments in writing. Remember that all dependent clauses need to be attached to an independent clause. Another way to tell if a sentence is complete or incomplete is to see if the sentence expresses a complete thought. If there is not a complete thought, if you feel left hanging when you read the sentence, it probably is incomplete. Examples of missing subjects. First of all, we will discuss the example of missing subject. As we have discussed in the definition that there will be something missing like subjects or verbs. Here are some sentences that are incomplete because they are missing subjects. Now look at the examples. Went to the store, ran into the woods. Now take a second to complete the sentences with subjects. Here are some possibilities. Jan went to the store. The D ran into the woods. Now look at this and now look at that. There is a difference in these two slides that here we are missing the subject, but when we put the subject, our sentence is complete. Now we have to look about the examples of missing verbs. These sentences are missing verbs. Again, try completing the sentences by adding verbs of your own. Now look at the example. The incredible performing artist from Toronto. Number 2 is 16 chobe chickens. The classroom full of first graders. Now we have to adjust our verbs. When we read the above phrases, we feel that we are left hanging. We ask, well, what about the classroom full of first graders? Let's add some verbs. The incredible performing artist from Toronto won a Grammy. 16 chobe chickens pecked every grain of corn from the barn floor. The classroom full of first graders laughed at their teacher's joke. Now the sense is very, very clear because we have added our missing verbs in the the here mentioned example. There is no verb, but now we have put our verbs in the example. Now that looks very sound. Now we have to look the sentence fragments as we have discussed in our definition in very early slides. Sentence fragments. Incomplete sentences are also called sentence fragments. They are pieces of sentences. Sometimes we see writers use fragments purposefully in fiction, but in academic writing, sentence fragments are generally frowned upon. So why should we use complete sentences? Well, we don't always use complete sentences when we talk to each other, but when we write, when we do not have the advantage of looking our readers in the eye, readers do not see our body language or hear our vocal inflections. When we are trying to communicate clearly in writing, we really must use complete sentences to effectively get our points across to our readers. As you revise your writing, always be sure to include both a subject and a verb in your sentence, and you are on your way to becoming a solid writer. Basically, that's the thing which can you through which can you be a solid writer. When you identify incomplete sentences in your writing, you are also identifying incomplete or unclear ideas. Now, correcting sentence fragments will make you writing clearer. Just because a sentence begins with a capital and ends with a period does not make it complete and grammatically correct sentence. Every sentence must have a subject and a verb and be a complete thought. Now we have to look sentence fragment check number 1. Can you identify a subject and a verb, or who or what is doing the action in the sentence? There are some examples we have to look at. Every sentence must have a verb, the action or state of being in the sentence. For example, first example, we have written that wrong. A sense of horror with papers scattered everywhere and chairs overturned. Now the scene did what? The right one is a scene of horror with papers scattered everywhere and chairs overturned greeted the students. Now we have added the verb greeted. Every sentence must also have a subject, who or what is doing the action in the sentence. Number 1, we are having the wrong example here. Ran into a chum with a bottle of rum and wound up drinking all night. Now we have missed the subject. Who did this? Now we are looking the right one. Jimmy Buffett ran into a chum with a bottle of rum and wound up drinking all night. Now we have added the who to the sentence. Our subject was missing there. Sentence fragment check number 2 is here. Sometimes students mistake a ing word or the to form infinitive for the verb. Both the ing word and the to form can act as subjects, but they are not verbs. Check that any ing word or to form is part of complete idea. Your sentence should answer the question who does what and shouldn't leave a question remaining. We are having the example. First of all, studying late into the night. Now we are missing our subject, who studied. Now look at the other one. We studied late into the night. Now we have added our subject. We ran to the store to buy soda. Now we have missed who bought the soda. Right one is we ran to the store to buy soda but forgot to get chips. Now we have added to the subject and verb. Now we have to look at how we have to fix fragments. Number 1 is read the words between each capital and period out loud. Do you see a subject and verb? Can you determine who does what? If you are missing either subject or verb, rewrite your sentence to add them. We are having the example, searching for my lost shaker of salt. Who is searching? I search for my lost shaker of salt. The shining sun, the warm breeze, the cool surf, palms blowing in the breeze. What is the verb? Now we are having the right one. The shining sun, the warm breeze, the cool surf and palms blowing in the breeze are great. Now we have to look how to fix sentence fragments. Number 2, read the words between each capital and period out loud. Do you see a subject and verb? Can you determine who does what? If you have a sentence fragment, check to see it belongs with the sentence immediately before or after. I had to study over the weekend because it was finals week next week. Now we have to look the other one. I had to study over the weekend because it was finals week next week. Getting into the car, driving along the coast and feeling the wind blowing in my hair, it is the best experience ever. Getting into the car, driving along the coast and feeling into the wind blowing in my hair is the best feeling. Now we have looked that what are the fragments and how we have to check our fragments rule. We have discussed about incomplete sentences, why we used to say the incomplete sentence, because somewhere or anywhere we miss our subject or we miss our verb. We have discussed today how we have to fix our problem with these things. Thank you. That's all. Allah Hafiz.